It's crucial for Canadians that Parliament is back and it's working and setting the priority.
Call a snap election?
Look, we need a strong mandate from is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay.
So it means that you'll no longer have to pay more to fuel your car or heat your home.
Wholly unsurprising, and that is because the
Grounded TV.
Basically, he is Mark the
Snake,
Carney.
eh?
Mark the Carney.
Here in the day
Mark
in
the
Halifax,
tricky.
the former governor of the
He does come off as a bit of a reptile. I'm not gonna lie.
Banks of Canada and England, joins us in studio. We're very happy to have him. Welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks.
I guess the first thing I should ask you, if you win the leadership, become prime
This is an
minister,
empty
do you
studio?
intend to
What the
continue
hell?
to prorogue Parliament?
Well, Parliament's going to be back on the 24th of March. Whatever happens in the leadership, and certainly it's crucial for Canadians that Parliament is back and it's working and setting the priorities for Canadians. Look, there's lots of issues. There's lots of issues been held up. And then on top of that, we have this economic crisis that has been caused by President Trump, so it's time to act.
Would you call a snap election?
Look, we need a
what?
strong mandate from the Canadian people, but what we're going to do is what's right for Canadians. If we're in the middle
Oh, you hear
of a
that?
crisis and there's specific...
So when he's asked, will he call a snap election?
Call a snap election?
Look, we need a strong mandate from the Canadian people, but what we're going to do is what's right
Other
for
words,
Canadians.
no.
If we're in the middle of a crisis and there's specific things that need to get done at that point, we will do them.
I want to ask you about tariffs, but first off, I'd like to ask you about your comments today.
That's what I
that
said
you
they probably
canceled
should do. They
consumer
should probably
portion
be fine with that.
of
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he is.
Rather
Sounds
than
like
putting
he-
off all
Sounds like
action
he-
until after the election, why not just get a few things in place and then do
Really?
the election right after?
I don't know. I feel like
You don't think he should?
If
If he could negotiate, I wish he would just negotiate with Pierre and just say, "Hey, what's something all three of us can agree? We're going to get this done right now, and then we'll do the election and move forward." Because we can't just leave the country hanging in limbo while we're all trying to parade around and pretending we know have the fighting each other, right? Just show that we have some base level agreement here that we need to put something in place. I don't expect it to go down like that, but it would be good.
Yeah, and just be respectful of each other, guys. Like, I understand you guys would not agree with each other, but the whole point is just to get people from both sides of the aisle on the same page so we can at least have an intelligent argument about these matters.
the carbon tax. Does that happen on day one?
Yeah, will happen on day one. And look, what's happened with the consumer carbon tax, and it's a very strong issue, as you know, here in Atlantic Canada, is it's become very divisive. So we're going to do several things, and I think this is a crucial difference. Pierre Poilievre, it's just axe the tax. That's it. He doesn't care about the fact that most households will be worse off. He doesn't care what it means for jobs and future growth in the economy. So what we're going to do, we'll axe the consumer carbon tax. We will get the large polluters to pay for incentives for people in Halifax, across Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, across the country, to make investments in cleaner appliances, in EVs if they want, to insulate their home, and on and on. Those are choices that people make as well. Sorry, I had to say this, Todd. Yeah. We're very focused on making sure that not just costs go down, but the overall incomes of all households go up. So we're going to be announcing some additional measures for that to be the case.
You just mentioned that Canadian households might be worse off. If that's the case, why cancel?
Well, this is a key point. If you're Pierre Poilievre, he just stops there, acts the tax, he doesn't care. Doesn't acknowledge that households, on average, take a household in this region, it's a household of four, it's probably $800-900 a year on net that they will be worse off. We know that. We get it, we care. So what we're doing, not just providing incentives if they take choices, but we'll be providing additional measures, economic measures, I'll announce in the next few weeks, that make sure that they come out ahead.
One of the things you mentioned is that you would offer incentives to buy things like energy efficient refrigerators to get...
That's their phone ringing in the back. They have a phone ringing in the back.
Dude, it sounds like they're in an empty studio, too, with no audience. There's like an echo and stuff.
Yeah, Mark Carney didn't want an audience, guys.
Already exists for those incentives. How is that going to help
possible,
Canada reach net zero?
So there's a couple things. One, what we're going to do, we're going to look at all of those. We're going to make sure those incentives are big enough and broad enough and clear enough to Canadians. Then secondly, what we're going to do is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens?
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used to. So anyway, so that's core to it. And then what happens is that those companies, they end up having a choice.
He's got to sharpen that up a little bit. He should have let that question hang there.
Like the way he's just talking,
said, hey,
no, yeah, you're not making a good case at all for this, like at all. You're basically saying, it's still going to affect industry. It's still going to affect growth as a country.
You're not understanding, because I'm saying he should have said, how much steel are you buying today, Todd? Let that hang there. Don't just keep on going. You let that question hang, because what I said, I complimented Pierre a lot on when he got asked about that gender thing, because he knew how to handle it. He was there. He was just asked the question, let it hang. Let the person stutter and not really know how to. Like what I said, I've been saying forever is that Trudeau in the House of Commons meetings, he should have been doing. He should have been turning it around, ask questions, make them be on the back foot. That's the strategy you got to go on here, right? Instead of stuttering through an answer that you don't really have fully fleshed out.
Say factory in that case of a steel company, or are they going to pay via the government? Are they going to pay Canadians to reduce those? It makes the system much more effective. It'll move it forward. We'll reduce emissions by more. We'll get more money in the pockets of hardworking Canadians.
So you're going to eliminate the consumer end of the carbon tax. Ms. Freeland said she would do the same thing. Mr. Guilbeault, who was an architect of the program, who once, I believe, said he would leave government if there wasn't a carbon tax, has said that he would be able to put it aside. For years, the Trudeau government, though, has told Canadians this is the only way to get to net zero is to have carbon pricing and to have a carbon tax. And now suddenly the Liberal Party is stepping away from that.
Well, a couple of things. One is we still have carbon pricing for the large companies, and that's essential for them to become more competitive and move forward. Secondly, you mentioned Stephen Guilbeault. He would have walked away from the government if we didn't have a comprehensive plan. And this is the difference between me, who's hasn't been a career politician, doesn't just put out press releases with half-baked ideas.
This right here, pause it for a second. He should have just said, I can't speak for Guilbeault. I don't know why he said that. That's a silly thing to say. Just don't even try and defend it.
Dude, the fact that he's welcoming all these like train wreck of a minister endorsements.
Well,
like,
I get why he would be.
Outliers of the Liberals are endorsing him openly. And I'm wondering,
he doesn't have to outright. He doesn't have to outright reject it in the same way that like Pierre Poilievre, if he gets endorsed by somebody who he doesn't like, he doesn't have to immediately reject that endorsement, right? But don't try to defend Guilbeault saying something like that, right?
I don't think anyone could defend Guilbeault anymore.
What good does that do you to be? Because he knows that it's a stupid thing to say, but he's trying to rephrase it. He's doing what people do for Trump, right? It's like, oh well, he actually meant this. No, he didn't mean that.
Well, so you're don't even bother. Doing for Mark Carney here a little bit. So
who, me?
Yeah, you're like, oh, he didn't mean that. He meant this.
No, I didn't say he didn't mean it. I'm saying he's doing this wrong. He should be saying this differently.
Okay. Anyways,
I'm not saying this is what he means. I just think he's got to fix up his rhetoric. It's not very good.
But waits until we have a whole plan that addresses the issues. And so why Stephen Guilbeault and others, a lot of environmental groups and others are supporting what I'm doing, what I'm proposing, is because it ensures we reduce emissions by as much, if not more, than we were anyways. It makes sure that Canadian households have more in their pocketbook. It makes us more competitive. And let me make a very, very important point, Todd. We're meeting here today.
Autumn in the chat. Anyone who thinks Carney would be better than Pierre, I think the cheese has slipped off your cracker. I love that euphemism.
Oh, yeah.
I never heard that.
Literally,
my cheese is
on the
off.
weekend, the President of the United States is threatening this country with massive tariffs, economic force.
I don't think he's going to win the election, but
we are going to stand up for Canada. But
especially if he continues to defend criminals like Stephen Guilbeault, who have like been caught red-handed.
He's not defending crimes.
Yes.
We're going to do.
Did he?
And we can do with this plan, if I may, and I'll stop here, is we can.
I mean, he was at a Diddy party.
Leapfrog the Americans.
Yeah.
They're turning inwards.
Maybe Pierre was too. Maybe they were all there.
I think that the only thing that could ruin Pierre's campaign and momentum is if he was found out to be at a Diddy party.
He was the one at the Diddy party.
Yeah. Only thing. He was the pilot for Epstein's plane or something.
This country, this region, we can move forward. We're putting in place the policies to do that.
So how do you do that? You called earlier today. You
Pierre
called,
was like
President Trump
a
bully.
groupie for Junior
What would
Mafia.
you do specifically
I don't even get that reference, but
tomorrow to counter those tariffs? Because they're coming.
So first thing, and I'll be absolutely clear, you're in a negotiation, you want to have a united front. We have our negotiators literally down there right now as we're talking. Melanie Joly, the foreign minister, the finance minister's down. Our
it doesn't make us feel any better, Mark.
Minister David McGuinty. I'm four square behind them, lockstep. But what specifically do we do? You do a couple of things in a negotiation, particularly with a bully. First up, you stand up to that bully. They're going to put tariffs on us. We're going to put tariffs on them. We'll match dollar to dollar. We will target those tariffs where it hurts the most in the United States, hurts the least in Canada. First thing. Second thing, what you always do in a negotiation, and I've been in a lot of negotiations, what you always do in a negotiation is you strengthen your outside option. What is our outside option in Canada? That is to make this economy as strong as possible. Take measures, and that's why I'm in this race, to make our economy as strong as it can be, and not just stronger than it has been, but the strongest economy in the G7.
I'll ask you about that in a second. Late yesterday, President Trump said they might exempt Canadian oil and gas. Are you prepared to use oil and gas by taxing or curbing exports as a bit of a hammer in a trade war?
Yeah. Couple of things about President Trump. He said a lot. He said we will, April 1st, February 1st, maybe February 15th, maybe oil and gas in, maybe this, maybe that. Justification for this changes all the time. Someday it's fentanyl, sometimes. So we got to be a little careful on over indexing on what he says at any individual moment, and just be clear. First and foremost, we're going to stand up. Secondly, where I started, which is no, we've got to keep our cards close to ourselves. There's no point turning over the cards in a negotiation in a poker game. But there are certain things
It's true.
that are much more effective in hitting the Americans, protecting our economy. And I think there's a hierarchy of measures that we would take. I'm not going to negotiate in public. I'm going to stand four square. I'll tell you, after March 9th, I hope to be the leader. I hope it's resolved by that before then. But if I'm the leader and we're still having a dispute with the Americans, I'll be leading the negotiation directly with the president.
Well, let me ask you about the economy. You mentioned we have a $62 billion deficit.
Yeah.
If there's the tariffs go through and a stimulus package is presented to help save, Susan Holt of New Brunswick last night said that her province stands to lose 6,000 jobs. That's with a population roughly the size of Edmonton or Winnipeg or Quebec City. A stimulus package would be tens of billions of dollars, no doubt.
What?
$62 billion.
He said the population of Edmonton. Edmonton's like twice that now.
Dollar deficit.
Of how many
It's like over 1 million. He said like 600,000.
Oh no! What were they talking about? He was saying that 600,000 jobs were going to be.
I thought I didn't say jobs. I thought he said people.
Oh, sorry, I had to run to the door. Yeah.
Keep the economy going.
Let's just rewind it for a sec here.
1,000 jobs. That's in a stimulus package is presented to help save. Susan Holt of New Brunswick last night said that her province stands to lose 6,000 jobs. That's with a population roughly the size of Edmonton or Winnipeg or Quebec City.
6,000 jobs.
A stimulus package would be tens of billions of dollars, no doubt. $62 billion deficit. How do you keep the economy going? How do you keep it from collapse? Those are big numbers. Can we afford that?
I just want to be clear. Let's be clear. It's important to use words properly. I'm Prime Minister. Our economic plan. We don't face those types of issues. This is a serious situation, but this is also a strong economy. We need to use our resources as the federal government, Premier Holt as her government as well, and I talked to her last week, including about these issues. We need to use our resources to maximum impact. And one of the issues, one of the reasons why I'm running for leader is, I'll be frank, and I've said this a few times, I want to reinforce it. The federal government has been spending too much and it's investing too little. So there's certain things that we're doing at the federal level that haven't been as disciplined, that have led to things like the $62 billion deficit. We need to clamp down on those. What we need to do is put more money in the pockets of Canadians.
See, that's good.
You'll hear more about that in the next few weeks, as well as, and this is absolutely crucial, it was a big part of what today's announcement was about, and it's a big part of our future, is making sure our companies are investing in the future. The federal government, precious tax dollars, catalyzing maximum investment. That's what we're going to do. And if I can make one last point, it is always the case in our system, if the economy slows sharply because of some shock from abroad, then that puts upward pressure on the deficit. And what you need to do in that circumstance is make sure that you're spending on the right things, being resolute, providing a plan to move forward, and that's what we'll do.
I've only got about 30 seconds here, but I want to get this in. You said this morning that you're not a politician. You've got the support of the majority of the Trudeau government caucus. Do you fear it might come across as looking like a new label on an old product?
I'm a very different person.
How is he going to talk with me on this? You know what I mean? Like, this has been the entire driver of his entire campaign is how am I not Trudeau?
Than the current Prime Minister. I was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories.
That's born out of Pierre trying to like literally say that he's
Just
Trudeau
like
with
Justin.
a mask on.
Just like Justin.
That's the slogan, right?
Teachers. I grew
Slogans.
up in Edmonton.
Very powerful.
I'm a goalie. He's a snowboarder. You know, there's lots and lots of differences. I've lots of experience in the business world, experience around the world. I'm bringing something very different. I'm only in this.
You've been closely aligned to this government, though.
Look, I've provided some advice to this government. Quite often, they haven't taken my advice, and there's a number of things the government has done that I didn't agree with, and that I will change. It's also look, I've provided some advice to this government. Quite often, they haven't taken my advice, and there's a number of things the government has done that I didn't agree with. And
further separate.
I don't know why. Hammer that home, dude. Hammer that in. Say they're not listening to me. That's why I'm running. Otherwise, I would have stayed on as an advisor. I wouldn't need to run. Lay into
also
that.
About the moment, though. We are in an economic crisis caused by events south of the border, but on top of cost of living crises, housing crises we feel right here, obviously in Nova Scotia and Halifax particularly. We need to move against those. For better or worse, this is what I know.
Mr. Carney,
this is what I know. This is what I can do.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
For taking the time to come to see us while you were in the Maritimes. Mark Carney, of course, who is...
It's so weird. They come on for a 10-minute interview. It's just like such a short, weird thing to do. Like, why not do a bit longer, you know?
Okay. For me, Rob, buying his bullshit, I bought it a long time ago. I just think that he needs to get his messaging right, or he's not going to do well in this election, right? That's my problem is I think you need to really, really work on your rhetoric. He's doing this whole I don't do slogans thing, but her name's Heather Butts.
Hopeful Mark Carney.
Oh my goodness. I just saw the screen. But, I wonder, like, Heather Butts.
Sorry. Just to say, I think that he just needs to get his rhetoric good, because slogans, unfortunately, just like Justice was able to do immediately, just like Justin, right? Axe the tax, build the homes,
I just gotta
all
say,
this stuff. It's like,
sorry.
Yep.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if she has a son, she better name him Seymour.
Seymour Butts, yeah, good. That'd be a good one, yeah.
Anyways. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But we'll push forward to some more mainstream news coverage now, mainly from CTV, since they've been covering this situation pretty closely, kind of breaking down further what Mark Carney said, and then we're going to get to a couple panels as well.
Just lie to me. I don't know why you think I want them to lie to me. That's not what I'm saying. No, I just think that the public doesn't understand this stuff, right? You start going off about listing numbers about carbon taxes and trickle down economics and stuff, and people's eyes will glaze over. They're not listening to anything you say, right? So that's what I'm saying is I think that if he wants to get his message through, he's got to hammer it home better. He's not doing a good enough job at doing that. He's got to hammer home, hey, I was an advisor to Trudeau. They weren't listening to me. That's why I'm running, say stuff like that. Then that gives people something to, every time somebody says you're just like Justin, it's like, oh, well, he's like disavowing the Justin Trudeau government. I don't know, like just do something to differentiate yourself. Otherwise there's going to be no competition, right? Pierre will just steamroll him.
He is vowing to scrap the consumer carbon tax if he becomes the next party leader.
So it means that you'll no longer have to pay more to fuel your car or heat your home. But when you choose an energy efficient appliance or an electric car or home insulation, you will be rewarded, and we will.
It's just funny here. Can we pause for 1 second? I just got to defend myself a little bit here. I compliment Pierre when he's doing good things. I compliment him on his rhetoric all the time. I go out of my way to not be partisan. And anytime I say anything positive about a liberal, you guys are losing it in the chat. So, I mean, like, who's really the partisan one here? Think of, like, is it possible that maybe you guys are being a little bit biased and you just don't like to hear anything good about anybody that you disagree with ever? Maybe.
I don't know. Sorry. Based off the shorts we post, like, we'll post a short of Trudeau, even if it's like him saying something that's not stupid, and we'll get like so many dislikes. Like people just don't want to see these guys anymore. They're just tired of their faces, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Big polluters to pay for it.
Carney says Canada's current climate policy has become too divisive and says he will instead offer Canadians incentives to go green. For more, we turn to CTV's chief political correspondent and host of Power Play and Question Period, Vassy Kapelos. A lot to break down today, Vassy. Let's start with the Liberal leadership race. What's your take on what we heard today from Mark Carney?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. He's moved away from the consumer rather carbon.
G-Money, I just want to argue with everyone. Thank you. That's what me and Saul want to do, honestly, too.
Yeah.
But
price, but
Arthur, welcome back. Make Canada great again. Love it.
Wholly unsurprising, and that is because the policy itself, the carbon tax, has become so deeply unpopular and so much so associated.
See, I feel like it's not really like the snakes bit him over and over again. I feel like we're all arguing about who the snake is. Everyone's been bit. We just can't figure out who it is, or most of us know who it is. But some people are like, you know, at the end of the day, if the other side wins, it's not the end of civilization as we know it. And I think we need to really chill out on that, right? Well, everyone acts like if the other side wins, then everything's lost, democracy's over, it's full dictatorship, we're all gonna die. Like, it's like, hey, realistically, things will get bad, but, you know, life will go on.
And my hope has always been, I hope if Pierre gets elected, I hope he does the best job possible. I hope I'm happy. I hope I'm surprised with how good of a leader he is, right? I've said over and over again, I hope that Trump does not do what I was worried he was going to do. Doesn't seem like I'm going to get that hope, but I mean, I'm not like torn up over I don't care if Pierre wins. I just hope he does a good job. That's all, you know. Like, I'm not super bought into this to an extent where I'm going to like pull my hair out.
In my opinion, they're all reptiles from the Alpha Centauri star system.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And so I think this was expected. The campaign had certainly signaled it would go this way. Whether it convinces, people beyond the Liberal leadership race, Canadians writ large, that, this individual in particular, Mr. Carney, who has in the past stood by the consumer carbon price, will move away from it, I think is a different story. But at this point in time, in order to clear the way for other policies and sort of a different message, something that differentiates himself from the current Prime Minister, he kind of had to do this. It's also worth pointing out that Chrystia Freeland, his main opponent, did the same thing.
Right, of course.
I agree with what Rob
let's go
said
back to tariffs for a moment and news they will be implemented beginning tomorrow. The implications of this are huge for Canadian politicians, to even put it mildly.
Yeah, very much so. It's honestly like a tectonic, earth-shattering thing in Canadian politics. Everybody is reorienting all over it, or around it, I should say, the leadership race, each of the political parties, mainly because the big question is, does this become the big ballot box question whenever the election is held? It feels that way right now. Heather?
Vassy, as always, thank you for your insight.